Hollywood panics over animators' threat to cancel animation over artificial intelligence. Hollywood is making money with animation again. Some companies like Universal have done well with animation. They didn't go the way of Disney and start ruining their brands. Right now, Universal has Despicable Me 4 out, and it's done $808 million. That's a lot of money. And that movie still has a way to go. Inside Out 2, though, broke animation records, doing $1.6 billion worldwide, and will result in a lot of extra revenue through multiple Disney distribution channels. Which is great. Disney's gotten back to just making movies that people might actually want to see. But animators are now wondering, look, we helped you actually make these movies. We are the animators. How is this going to impact us when you start bringing in artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is extremely prevalent right now. I use it in helping to prepare some of my videos. Hollywood is currently using animation for storyboarding. Not all of Hollywood, but plenty of Hollywood. This is Storyboard Hero AI. You can kind of just give them a plot, and they will take the plot and break it into scenes. I haven't used it. I want to experiment with it and see what it can do. Hollywood is going to have to figure out how they're going to take care of people who may not have jobs in the future. I don't know what's going to happen. But AI and algorithms and programming have existed in animation already for a long time. For example, Pixar developed an algorithm to render water. There are no people at Pixar sitting around trying to figure out how we're going to make water look real. They already figured it out. So who does all the water over at Pixar? Well, apparently they do it through a subroutine, through an algorithm. Similarly, Pixar talks about how in Monsters, Inc., they developed a program to render all the hair on Sully, the monster. So who's animating all the hair on Disney's Pixar characters? I don't know. I don't work there, but I can't imagine that they're going to develop this technology and then not use it. Of course, it's being done by an algorithm. So if you're an animator and you work for Disney right now, or you work for any of the studios, you're pretty concerned because they're not giving out contracts and they're talking about going on strike. Coming from the Wrap, no contract, no cartoons. Animation Guild members stand together as talks begin. And this is the time that animators have to stand up and say, look, we're creatives. We helped you get to where you are. You need to figure out how you're going to take care of us. I don't know how they're going to do that because there are going to be multiple layoffs at these companies. There just have to be. It's not because we want them to be. It's technology. This is something I started bringing up a few months ago from The Hollywood Reporter, Jeffrey Katzenberg. AI will drastically cut number of workers it takes to make animated movies. Quote, it took 500 artists 5 years to make a world-class animated movie. Katzenberg said this at a Bloomberg conference. Quote, I don't think it will take 10% of that with AI. Who is Jeffrey Katzenberg? He was at Disney, deeply involved in the production of The Little Mermaid, Disney animated production in general, and then he went on to start DreamWorks Animation. You may have heard of it. The guy knows the business, and when he's talking about AI and how it's going to affect animators, he's talking about things that you know they must already be working on. How are they going to go ahead and spend $200 million on a production when they think that AI can cut 90% of the cost out of it? Or at least 90% of the employees working on it, which is pretty much the cost. From The Hollywood Reporter, as AI encroaches on Hollywood, animators say this is an existential moment. As the 5,000-strong Animation Guild starts negotiations with studios, outsourcing jobs and AI are the major points of contention. And outsourcing has been going on for decades. But now it's like there are no limits. AI is not like outsourcing things to some studio in a foreign country with bad working conditions. AI does a lot of work and it does it really cheaply. I don't know AI animation as some kind of an expert. But I do use AI to help me with thumbnails. My thumbnails have been improving over the last few weeks on my YouTube videos. This is how I make my Deadpool thumbnails. All of my Deadpool images are cool and they're original because I make them myself on AI. Midjourney costs about $10 a month. It does a lot of work for that $10. Just don't ask me to animate a Pixar movie. I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet. Jeanette Moreno King's daughter is 17 and wants to eventually work in animation. As the president of the Animation Guild, a union that represents more than 5,000 artists, writers, technicians, and production workers who've been credited on Kung Fu Panda 4, Wish, and other recent releases, Moreno King, you might think, would eagerly encourage this dream. But at this juncture, she's instead advising caution. Quote, I can't promise her that it's going to be possible, she says. She really can't. Her daughter is 17. If it's going to be 5 years or maybe 10 years before she gets a really good job in an industry like this, it's going to be changing a lot in the next 10 years. The animation industry is in turmoil as Moreno King's union entered its latest round of contract negotiations with top Hollywood studios and streamers on August 12th. While the larger entertainment business undergoes a major contraction, rounds of layoffs have buffeted top firms like Netflix Animation, DreamWorks Animation, and Pixar in the last few years. Pixar just laid off 14% of all their staff, right before Inside Out 2 came out and made more than $1 billion. How would you feel if you worked at Pixar? You'd say, hey, wait a second, you just got rid of me, but you're making a fortune, an absolute fortune on our work. And maybe I didn't work on it, but come on, it does take a kind of a community of talent to produce projects. The outsourcing of work and/or production to companies in foreign countries, long the bane of the union, has continued apace per the Guild. Disney's new animation studio in Vancouver, Canada, announced in 2021, is a non-union shop according to the Animation Guild. DreamWorks Animation is reportedly moving away from in-house production on certain projects and working more with outside vendors. By working more with outside vendors, that's also a way that they can say, oh, well, we subcontracted it to this studio. Do they use AI in their work? Well, we don't know. We just give them a contract and they produce the work, and whatever we get, we get. Companies have been doing that kind of thing for a long time. Then there's the threat of generative AI on the horizon, with several animation roles expected to be among those hardest hit by technological revolution. Jeff Katzenberg, the co-founder of DreamWorks and former chairman of Walt Disney Studios, has predicted that generative AI could eradicate 90% of animation artist jobs. The word that some negotiators at the union are using to describe this moment is existential. And they're absolutely right. It's now or never, because the train has left the station. I don't know why Jeff Katzenberg made that statement publicly. It's really, really explosive. Can you imagine if the head of DC Comics or the head of Marvel Comics said, oh, well, in 2 years or so, we expect it's going to take 90% less artists to make our comic books. If you were a comic book artist, and some of them do listen to my channel, I always have a lot of love for comic book artists. Comic book artists would be kind of nervous about that. The major comic companies don't use AI. Maybe it'll have nothing to do with comics, but for animation, without question, it's a major issue. I guarantee you they're going to do it. This is like the invention of social media. This is like the invention of email. It's a big deal. Companies can't be competitive and not keep up with technology. For example, hand-drawn animation versus computer-generated animation. Hand-drawn animation is not very common anymore. Computer animation was pretty much brand new when Jeff Katzenberg was working for Disney more than 30 years ago. Could companies really stay in business just doing hand-drawn animation and compete with other major companies? And then the other issue is with generative AI is it's pretty fast. So if it would take 5 years to make a sequel to a movie, or 3 years to make a sequel to a movie, with their current production methods, not including AI might be able to turn that movie around in a couple of months. Maybe less time. I haven't studied it carefully. I don't really have all the information. But it's going to be much, much faster. And when you produce content and you have customers, and let's say you have a hit movie like Inside Out 2, and maybe you want next year to put out Inside Out 3, you could actually do that. And that's why it's such a dangerous time for people working in the industry. Well, these are people's dreams that they've turned into careers, says writer and negotiations committee member Madison Bateman, who worked on DuckTales. So we really try to keep that in mind as we move into negotiations, that we are fighting for the livelihoods of our membership, for our careers, and for our dreams. At the end of the video, I'll tell you more about the Deadpool thumbnails I've been making on Midjourney. Securing contract language on generative AI is a top priority. After forming an AI task force in the spring of 2023, the union has polled its membership on how generative AI is already being used in their workplaces and partnered with other organizations to survey media leaders on how the technology could affect jobs in their industries. Especially impacted in animation will be sound editors, 3D modelers, compositors, graphic designers, effects artists, and animators. Overall, the union asserts that 29% of animation jobs are estimated to be possibly disrupted in the next 3 years, the length of the union's next contract. I've never produced a big budget animation project. I don't know exactly what goes into it, but I would be surprised if it's not a much higher number than 29%. What Jeff Katzenberg said at that Bloomberg conference is accurate. When these executives like Jeff Katzenberg, but other billionaires, other multimillionaires running big companies, when they go to these conferences, they say things for that audience. It's usually not taken outside of that audience and then spread out through the media. It's not that it's even a secret club or something. If you watch YouTube, I watch the Milliken Conference sometimes, Mike Milliken's organization. They have CEOs of banks, finance companies, entertainment people, all kinds of people, and they say all kinds of things that you would be surprised that they're saying. One of them was banks that said that they used customer information in ways that weren't completely legal. And he mentioned this and he said it publicly on YouTube, but who's going to go after him? Pretty much nobody. So when you hear someone who knows the business talking in an environment like that, I'm telling you, I'm giving you some advanced information here. It's happening. And my greatest concern is I don't know how you can contract your way out of that. You could pay people right now for the future of what this industry is going to do and give them a share in it somehow. But how could new people come into a business when their jobs are being taken by artificial intelligence? Will generative AI really bring about a complete sea change? Former Animation Guild president and USC School of Cinematic Arts professor Tom Cito notes in an email that since computers emerged as an animation tool in the 1980s, there has always been a cadre of executives who rub their hands together with glee at the thought of getting rid of a lot of artists. However, he adds, the results in computer-generated animation still necessitated human artists and technicians. He continues, today similar claims are being made about AI. We shall see. Whatever the outcome of this period, storyboard artist Sam Tung, who worked on X-Men 97, a member of both the AI task force and the negotiations committee, says that in bargaining, it's going to come down to making sure that artists can choose what technology is used in the pipeline and making sure that that isn't coming at the detriment of staffing and work, which kind of sounds impossible. So the artists are going to somehow in their contracts dictate what the studio can do in terms of utilizing production. So you can use email if we say you can use email. You want to use a fax machine or a cell phone? Well, you've got to get our permission. Who are the major animators at Pixar? Which animator do you go to see their movies because you know that guy is great and you just can't wait to see his or her work? This is the problem. Even really talented people don't have their own following. And artists are treated often as a commodity. So how are animators going to be protected if truly it is this big of a deal? Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but it really looks like it's a huge, huge deal. They listed all those job types that, yes, you could probably automate a lot of that work with AI. The union's other key issue is fighting the outsourcing of LA County studio work to other countries, which is when instead of making movies or TV shows in LA, studios have been moving the production to other places, other countries, but also other states. Why would they do such a thing? Because it's cheaper, because they get cash incentives, because they're bringing work and bringing activity to those local communities, whether they're in the United States or if they're in foreign countries. Disney sends a tremendous amount of work to the UK. As part of the cash rebates they give, it can be 25% of the cost of production. They will even rebate the cost of a big name actor if it's part of the production and you do the whole production in their country. You can't put it in a contract. It's an industry issue. If Universal signed on and said, no, you know what? We're never going to cut our production cost. We'll just do whatever the unions and the guild wants us to do. They could do that. The problem is Disney's not going to do that. Their other competitors are not going to do that. Or even if they all do, independent producers won't do that who are not going to be involved with the guild. It's a serious, serious problem for artists, and I don't see a solution to it. This isn't a negotiation thing. This is a technology thing. Like streaming was to video rental stores. Streaming destroyed them. Or like streaming services are now to cable companies. This labor group has battled this phenomenon before. After winning a protective clause against so-called runaway production during its 1979 strike, the union gave up that language in a subsequent work stoppage in 1982. Now the Animation Guild's main contract largely doesn't have any outsourcing protections, according to Marino King. Well, they certainly ought to have thought of that, because outsourcing could be how they crush them. These issues could become points of contention with studios, which will likely seek the flexibility to experiment with AI and attempt to minimize labor costs. While the Animation Guild has not disclosed specific proposals yet, leaders tell The Hollywood Reporter that the AI language in the deal in July offered a starting point, but would need to be adjusted to suit their union. It remains unclear how the union will seek to fight outsourcing, but at a rally in Burbank on August 10th, two storyboard artists suggested in a speech that the union would be fighting for staffing minimums to help alleviate shrinking crews. In 2023, a minimum staffing ask from the Writers Guild of America for TV writers' rooms became a sticking point in negotiations. Eventually, following a 148-day strike, the Guild did win a staffing baseline. But of course, Hollywood has been collapsing ever since. I've done several videos on this. It's not been good for people working in Hollywood at any level. Unless you're at the highest of all levels, they always seem to do okay. Other craft-specific issues will raise their heads in negotiations as well. Animation Guild writers are looking to stem an alleged trend of companies hiring many writers as freelancers rather than as staff writers. Quote, freelance writing used to mean flexibility or a little extra money. Now it's a hard-scrabble existence that's becoming the norm. Timing directors are pushing back against what they say are unlivable unit rates that compensate freelance workers based on their work screen time rather than the hours they put in. So you do freelance work for a company, and they say, well, check your contract. We're only going to pay you if the work you used actually round up on screen. Do you have control over that? No, of course you don't. So you're kind of like working on a random commission, but you don't actually have say over whether or not you're going to get compensation. Just work really hard and make sure it's really fantastic whatever you turn in, because if it's not, it's probably going to get cut. Quote, I am super meticulous and I do really good work, but I'm not fast, says Christine Smith, who worked on American Dad. So for people like me, I just can't make enough to live on it. And that can happen, that there are things that you love to do, that you're actually good at doing, but you can't do it in a productive way that you can actually make a living. So either Hollywood's being predatory, or this person's just not fast enough to produce commercial work. That does happen in creative industries all the time, which means it could kind of be a hobby, but not really professional work. At the same time, if Hollywood is being predatory and they're not giving people a chance to get up to speed, so to speak, that's also not fair. But there have to be industry norms, and then people have to kind of work within the norms. That's good for both sides, but they do have to agree on what the working arrangement's actually going to be. And don't forget, this year's negotiations will undoubtedly be affected by the high levels of unemployment in the union. In a sobering statistic, the Animation Guild disclosed on July 31st that it estimates, through research and internal surveys, about 1/3 of its working members have been laid off in the past year. 1/3? That's Depression-era numbers. 1/3 of the people in your industry have been laid off, and you're still fighting to get work because now you have to compete with generative AI? This is not viable. And I'm not one to tell someone what to do, but if you're in this industry, you have to think twice. 1/3 of the industry already went away. How much more work is going to disappear? Probably a lot. There's a possibility that that level of unemployment could result in members shying away from the union taking an aggressive stance in talks. Because an aggressive stance could risk a strike and or result in further financial hardship. Then there's another possibility, adds Tung, the guy who worked on X-Men 97. Quote, I think that people are engaged and activated and feel like times are dire, he says. When everybody is comfortable, it can be easy to check out and assume things are fine. If anything, this situation may actually be activating the membership, which is a positive way to look at things. Like, hey, we all really have a serious problem. Let's get moving. Let's get this done. I like this guy's attitude. Now, here's how I'm using AI today to support my YouTube channel. This thumbnail came from AI. A robot reading a book. The images I use on my thumbnails now are usually from Midjourney. This is my Deadpool folder with beer and guns, and Deadpool's great. He's always fun, his videos do pretty well, and he's the beginning of the end of what the propaganda people did to the MCU. So I like Deadpool stories. And I like Deadpool thumbnails. My other alternative for thumbnails is to find pictures searching on Google. But I like the idea of coming up with Deadpool shooting a gun and holding a bottle of liquor, or beers. Or a flamethrower was another one. And it's not just for Deadpool, I just use it whenever it can be useful. When I was a kid, I was an artist. I wasn't that good. I didn't put enough time into it, and things happened and I got off track. So it's great to make some kind of art again. This was an image I was going to use where Deadpool was leading the charge of future sequel Deadpools, because everyone's been talking about how, of course, Deadpool's going to appear again. He's going to be in sequel movies. And it would have been great for the video, but I couldn't get it all to work properly. Today, I realized I could utilize ChatGPT, which I do use every day, but I figured out I could use it to do a search for an expansive list of companies that are involved in controversies related to LGBT, woke issues, or diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I asked ChatGPT to please work up a list of companies that have gotten in trouble this way and what they got in trouble for. I asked for 50 companies. And it gave me a list of 50 companies along with the issues of what they got in trouble for. I'll use this list as research to see when they hit a bump in the road, and then we'll talk about those stories, because there's a lot of things going on. It's hard to keep track of everything. And by the way, it did this list of 50 companies in less than a minute. And then I asked, hey, do you have any more companies? And it said, yeah, sure. And it gave me another 50 companies. And then it gave me like 50 more companies with other details. MasterCard, criticized for its DEI initiatives and public support for LGBT rights. Mattel, targeted for its support of LGBT rights and diversity in its product lines. It goes on and on. I then asked for a list of companies who had backed down after pressure over their agendas, and it gave me a list of like another 50 companies and what they backed down over and what they did to back down. It's a lot of information. I can't use all that information all at once. It still needs to be focused on and processed. But all of that searching took like less than 5 minutes. And that included me trying to figure out like what to ask it and what to do with the information. We can't stop technology. It goes into the marketplace. So is it going to affect us all drastically? Well, did email affect you? Did your cell phone affect you? Did streaming affect video stores? Did streaming affect Disney and the rest of the entertainment industry? Is streaming affecting cable television right now? The answer is yes to all those things. Artificial intelligence can't really be its own thing, but it is a tool, and you can figure out how to use it. And that's why I've been getting into it over the last couple of months to see what I can do to leverage it as a tool to support my YouTube channel and make better videos for you guys. It's one of the reasons my videos have been better these last couple of weeks. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.